After 40 years of making music magic, The Cure was finally inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It was Trent Reznor of the Nine Inch Nails who inducted the band, and he was able to coin this phrase, the most excellent rock band the world has ever known. A new album and a tour is in the works, along with a new book written by Christian Gerard called The Cure FAQ. All that is left to know about the most heartbreakingly excellent rock band the world has ever known. Available everywhere, October 15, 2021. Welcome to Something Came from Baltimore. I'm your host, Tom Gouker. And in this episode, we're chatting with Christian Gerard about the book, and then we will count down our favorite Cure songs. The Cure's catalog is so vast that between both of us, we found 20 different songs to chat about. Something Came from Baltimore had Christian Gerard on the show September 30th, 2018, where he reviewed his Pop Matters article as he counted down the top 10 alternative songs from the 80s. He is back today via Zoom all the way from Minnesota to talk about his new project, The Cure FAQ. Christian Gerard, welcome to Something Came from Baltimore.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here with you again.
Yeah, we talked about a couple years ago where you were counting down the top 10 coolest 80s songs. Now we're back again, but you now created a book. It's called The Cure FAQ. All that is left to know about the most heartbreakingly excellent rock band the world has ever known, and it's released on 10/15. So just by the title, the most heartbreakingly excellent rock band. So this isn't a scathing tell-all book where you're really digging in the dirt, are you?
No, not at all. I'm not really interested so much in the personal lives of the band members. I mean, we delve into that a little bit, but it's about the music. The music is what the book is about, and that's what the focus is on.
When did you fall in love with The Cure?
Really, the first exposure I had to The Cure was when I saw the video for Just Like Heaven on MTV, which would have been 1987, the Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me album. It just hit me right away what a cool song that was. And so I went out and bought the cassette. I sat down and listened to it all the way through, read the lyrics. You know, I remember the day very vividly. And that was my first intro to the band. And then I had a classmate in junior high who, his older brother, you know, was kind of the music guru and would pass on stuff to him. He made me a dub cassette copy of the Standing on a Beach singles collection along with the B-sides. And that was it. Those two combined, that really just, you know, that's all it took.
Now that, 40 years have passed, what is the emotional connection, or what is the thread that keeps you so excited about the band to this day?
Well, they've really slowed down in terms of studio material. It's just the songs, they take you back to a place in time. They speak to the listener on multiple different levels, and there's so much to explore. The catalog is so large. You're always hearing new things and perceiving new thoughts about the music. Robert Smith is just a brilliant songwriter, and there's just a lot. There's enough to keep you going, all these years later.
Yeah, when we talk about phases of this band, you may correct me, and if I know that there's Cure fans, obviously, are going to click onto this, who want to listen to us have a conversation about it. What I liked about this band is that they were able to reinvent themselves through the years, and I think when you do that, you gain an additional audience, and I don't think they turned off; they stayed with them. But I looked at them as a 4-prong phase of this band, where they started out as very new wave, very similar like to Gang of Four, and then they went industrial, like more like Ministry. And I would say that their most successful time period was more like arena rock, on the lines of like NXS and Smashing Pumpkins. And then the last 20 years is just a touring band where they're basically giving you a 3+ hour show every time. Does that seem about right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good way of looking at it. They certainly had that sort of post-punk Gang of Four type style in the early days, the first couple albums. And then I don't know if industrial, I mean, you could consider industrial, the Pornography album. It's definitely got a vast sound to it. And then the pop era came right after that. They did a sharp left turn. That was one of the most pivotal moments actually in their development, when they switched from that industrial heavy goth sound on Pornography in 1982 to that pop, synth pop, Let's Go to Bed singles that they put out only 6 months later. That was the change that really made everything possible for the Cure, because then their umbrella was so widened that they could do anything, and they did anything from that point forward. That was their big pop phase up through Disintegration, and then you're right, they became sort of the stadium rock through the late 80s, early 90s. Their last studio album was 12 years ago, so they are touring bands these days. They have a new studio album that's in the can, supposed to be in the can and ready to be released, but no word on that just yet. But yeah, I would say that that's an accurate breakdown.
Robert Smith is the lead singer. Obviously, he plays guitar, and he is, I think, the bread and butter of what this band's all about. When you love The Cure, you have to kind of buy into what Robert Smith is presenting. It's funny because he was goth looking back in the 80s, which was blowing people's minds, but that is very common today, the look. But, he was teetering around I call the sunken place, now that we have a name for it, where either the lyrics were depressing or the music was depressing to put you in that depression state. So, the word suicide is not too far from the lips of some of these songs that were very, I can't say self-loathing, but they were very, very intense in their imagery. You link them to the Smiths, I guess, at that time period, of bands that were really tapping into young people's vulnerabilities and emotions and fears and alienation, and they did it in a way that I think feels like a friend, like that, where these people understand who I am.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And they speak to things in feelings and emotions that adolescents in particular, and those who have sort of considered themselves outsiders, don't fit into the mainstream. They speak in terms that they hadn't really heard before from pop music or rock music. And there is an element of self-loathing to some of the stuff, in particular the Pornography record. It's definitely self-loathing. And it's interesting that you mentioned the Smiths, because they sort of tackle some of the same things, but in such a very different way. It was sort of the mordant humor and sort of the the wry cynicism and so forth with Morrissey. With Robert Smith, you just have very sort of straight from the heart. It's very sincere, and it's just what he felt at the time. But he would always say that he was never suicidal, and those bleak songs didn't really represent who he was as a person, as a complete person. It was just what he was able to express at that time, and I think that's another reason why he did such a sharp left turn with the pop stuff. Because he was not satisfied with only showing that part of his personality. And, it really opened him up to a lot of different possibilities.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like a sad clown, happy clown, hot, 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 and stuff where you're like, wait a minute. This is that guy that was, wearing black and very solemn. And now he's dancing around. And, it's a stark image. I mean, obviously the music helps because it's so good that, it doesn't matter that he did this change. It's just that it's for people who really like Pornography and the earlier, material. You're like, wait a minute. This is jarring. Yeah. So are they goth? Would you consider this band goth, or are they a pioneer of goth rock? I mean, now I would say they're not.
Well,
back then I'd say they would have been.
I think that most definitely. I mean, they have always denied it. They've always said that they're not a goth band, and they've sort of separated themselves from that movement. They don't denigrate it necessarily, but they don't consider themselves part of it. But, they clearly are. They clearly have been influential in the goth scene. People who are in that lifestyle, that subgenre, that subculture, a lot of them are fans of the Cure, revere the Cure. Albums like 17 Seconds, Faith, and Pornography are all considered milestones of the goth subgenre. And, just look at the shows. Robert Smith looks like a goth character. I mean, he's created this character for himself, just like David Bowie did with Ziggy Stardust. except Robert Smith created this character that he's stuck with for 40 years. It's a goth character. And you look out in the crowd when they play, you've got a lot of people, male and female, dressed, very similar, and it's considered goth. So, they don't really get to make that decision as to whether they're goth or not. That's sort of out of their purview, once they put out the music, and it's up to others to interpret what it is, and to them anyway. And they are certainly a major player in the goth scene, for sure.
The book is titled All That Is Left to Know About the Most Heartbreakingly Excellent Rock Band the World Has Ever Known.
That title was borrowed from Trent Reznor's speech in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It was sort of paraphrased from that. It was just great wordplay there, but heartbreakingly excellent. I would say that the attention to detail in the studio recordings and Robert Smith, the fans know that if they put something out under the Cure's name, it's going to be something that he believes in 100%. And so it's absolutely genuine. They stand behind everything that they put out. They believe in everything they put out. Now, maybe when years go by and they look back, they are not so fond of certain things. But at the time that they put something out, they're fully behind it, totally, emotionally involved in it. That is something that a lot of artists, I don't think you can say. They're putting out product, in a lot of cases, or sort of half-assing it. That's something that never happens with Robert Smith and the Cure. They are absolutely genuine in everything they do. And I think that's a big part of why they're so well respected today in particular, that people realize that.
How is the book laid out? Are you going track by track? Are you going album by album or time period?
It's album by album. It's generally chronological. There are 35 chapters. The sort of idea behind the FAQ series that is on Backbeat Books, which is where this book is being published, is to have short standalone chapters. So, for example, if you wanted to read about Disintegrations, you just flip to chapter 24, and boom, you have a fully enclosed chapter about that album. And so that's how the book is structured. There's 35 chapters. It goes from the sort of beginning chronologically through the albums, and then within each album chapter, each song has its own little blurb. So every song in the Cure's catalog is covered in this book, including B-sides, rarities, everything.
Simon Gallup was the bassist for 40 years. He's probably the only one that stuck by. There is a large array of people that came and went in that band and created some amazing sounds. He says, good luck. And then he tags it, I'm fed up with the betrayal, without really explaining what that is.
It's shocking. It was, especially the timing. I wasn't able to really address it in the book. It's for the volume 2, I guess. But, Robert Smith and Simon Gallup, they've had a very close relationship for 40 plus years. He wasn't the original bassist, but he came in very quickly, very early on in the band's career history. But it has been a tumultuous relationship. There have been a lot of issues back and forth over the years. Simon Gallup left the band at the end of the Pornography tour. He and Robert Smith got into a fist fight after a show, and he left and was out of the band for 3 or 4 years until the Head on the Door album, and Robert brought him back. There have been times when Simon had to miss shows for various reasons, health-related reasons. During the Wish tour, he missed a couple shows. He was late coming into Wild Mood Swings recording. So there have been sort of these blips throughout the years. Last year, before actually, in 2019, when they were doing the stadium tour of Europe, Simon missed 2 shows. His son actually filled in for him at 2 of these festival shows. So there's a history. They've had issues where Simon has trouble getting along with some of the band members. He was instrumental in actually Roger O'Donnell, the keyboard player, getting fired after the Disintegration tour. He basically gave Robert an ultimatum saying, him or me. So Simon has done those sort of things over the years. Specifically, what prompted this, it hasn't been made public. Robert hasn't even commented on it. There has been nothing since that post that Simon did, and then he took it down after that. So who knows? Maybe It'll be resolved. Maybe it'll be smoothed over, or maybe he's gone from the band. He's been gone from the band before, so it's really hard to say. I hope that he comes back and they sort of smooth things over.
I saw Robert Smith get interviewed, and he has that aloofness that like Lou Reed and Andy Warhol were able to portray, where it's any question you ask me, I'm going to put you off, and I'm allowed to, not get excited about my work, but to act like I'm the opposite. So there's very few artists I can think of right now that have the ability to do that, where, it's accepted that if you're going to interview Robert Smith, that he's going to dish you in this kind of way. But it's very old. It's very old school, arrogant / genius that you just accept with. What's the reasoning for all that? What's that all about?
Well, it's absolutely true, and he's been a genius at sort of manipulating the press over the years. He's one of the best at it, and he plays both sides of the coin. For example, when Lullaby came out as the first single from Disintegration in the UK, it hit number 5. And Robert was like, "Oh gosh, I didn't even know what chart position it was. It's horrible that my least favorite song on the album is the single. I didn't even want it to be a single. It's terrible." And then when Lovesong became a huge hit in America, he did the exact same thing. And so he's sort of distancing himself from the success so that he can still maintain his sort of indie cool. And yet he's plugging these songs. He loves these songs. He's years later, he talks nothing but good things about him and talks about, obviously. So, he's just playing sort of both sides of the issue there. And he's been able to do that throughout his career. People know that he invents bullshit in his interview answers all the time. You have to take it with a grain of salt. He's given multiple different answers to what a particular song means through the years. Maybe some of that is the meaning changes, for him. Yeah, he's been able to sort of get his own way with the media. And I think that it just makes him look cooler, honestly. I think
I agree. You know what? It's weird, but I agree with you 100%. I find like that aloofness like a time period ago where we didn't know too much about artists like David Bowie or Lou Reed. Like now we're saturated with the artists where we know too much about them and they tell too much. So the fact that we barely know Robert Smith, what he eats, what he loves, what he does, and he can play that aloofness thing, and we're shocked and scared at the same time. It's really
it's myth making is what it is, and he does it so well. And we don't know anything about him, and he keeps himself private, and it's part of his persona and the character that he's created. And if we punctured that too much with too much information, we'd destroy the myth. It wouldn't be nearly as epic.
Well, let's do the countdown. I thought about this before. I've done countdowns where I do my 10, you do your 10, we do our 9. We bounce back and forth, and I find that a little jarring. So I thought I would do my top 10 first, and then you can comment on these songs as you see fit. If you don't feel like, commenting, that's fine too. They'll be your top 10 also. The one thing that's beautiful about The Cure is that we shared each other's top 10s, and not one song on our top 10 is a duplicate, which I think is pretty awesome.
That is awesome.
My first one is, I'm going to go through 10, is just Lullaby. It is from Disintegration. The video is amazing, where he's in bed and spiderwebs are coming, and Spider-Man is having me for dinner tonight. And it was that time period where videos really matched the performance of the song. They're saying it's like addiction and depression and sexual assault from his childhood, where a lullaby is where you're singing someone to bed, but a lot of lullabies have like really scary imagery in it for little kids, and that's kind of where this song is scary imagery, and by the way, go to bed. It's that kind of thing.
it's just spooky, and I love the video. That's probably my favorite video, and it's just Robert Smith plays it up. He's a good actor, you look at his roles in these videos, he forced himself to do it. He comes through,
Definitely. My number 9 is an album track from Pornography, the 1982 album. I was way into the hit off the album called The Hanging Garden. The next song on side one was Siamese Twin. And I actually, that was my 1-2 punch on this album, where I couldn't get enough of Siamese Twin and The Hanging Garden combined. And it was the highlights from that album. It's a lot denser than most of the stuff that I pick. I'm more on the early pop stuff. This to me was like, it was obvious that Smashing Pumpkins was listening, and other bands that were in the grunge period, because they were picking off sounds and thoughts that were going to appear sooner than later.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's that sort of sinuous, almost sort of, Eastern mysticism type of sound, And there, you mentioned self-loathing. That song in particular just oozes with self-loathing. And it's just really intense. Yeah.
It does. It's perfect. It's a perfect example for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so the number 8 is Boys Don't Cry. It's from 1980, and we didn't know in America who the Cure were or what they were all about. Back in the 1980s, we were getting, record stores weren't flooding the market with Cure records or the songs that were coming from Europe. They were flooding us with Triumph and Loverboy. And So when a kid gets into the Cure, you're borrowing a record from someone, you're recording it on a cassette. They didn't have CDs then. And you passing it around like, it was, something amazing. And that was the case with Boys Don't Cry. It really popped up in America when the greatest hits, Standing on the Beach, where people were like, they were catching up, just like the Depeche Mode. Yeah. They were catching up with the back catalog. It's a really cool song. It's really herky-jerky, but even the lyrics, it's a well-written song for a really young band. And even then they were tapping into, romantic love and feeling alienated and alone. So Boys Don't Cry rocks for me.
I try to laugh about it, hiding the tears in my eyes, 'cause boys don't cry. Boys don't cry. I would tell you that I loved you if I thought that you would stay. But I know that it's no use and you already gone away. Misjudge your limits, pushed you too far, took you for granted, thought that you did every mama, now I would do most.
That's a classic song. And it was interesting to me, you mentioned that that song didn't pop up really for American audiences until the singles compilation, and that's true. And it was never a hit. That song, it's a classic now. And, they close their shows with it a lot of times. The entire stadium is singing along every word to a song that was released 40 years ago, that was never a hit. And, it just was word of mouth, and it just grew, in a very sort of natural way. And it's a classic.
Yeah. Standing on the Beach was catching up with Depeche Mode. It was the exact same thing. It caught the ears and eyes of people who weren't aware that they were out there. They had a cult following for both bands, but that album was just a gateway drug into the band, and it was very, very successful.
Yeah, it was a huge breakthrough for them, no doubt about it.
I go to number 7, which is Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me from 1987. The album, it's the first song on the album, which is a double album. It's one of the first albums I got on CD, so I was so excited to play it. The first song is The Kiss, and to me, that's like an arena rock, alternative rock, like jam that is amazing. I love to hear it loud to this day. To me, it feels like Smashing Pumpkins were writing down note for note, word for word, everything that was going on, because we would get this vibe later with Siamese Dream and Gish. The Cure were, even though this was more of a commercial record for them, it was way ahead of its time in what the sounds that they were providing.
That one was kind of shocking to me because I picked up that was my first album that I got from them, and because of Just Like Heaven. But when you put that on and that's the first song, it's a bit shocking. You're not really prepared for it. I didn't know what to expect, but I remember very well thinking, oh my gosh, this is a little intense, and I grew to love it.
Yeah, it's great. The next song on this, I've lost count of what number it is, but it's Lovesong. So this is how great the Cure is, where Disintegration, the third single off this album, the third is Lovesong. It came out in 1989. It was a major hit, but if it wasn't for Adele on her 20, it was the only cover that she did, it sold 31 million, and she slowed down the version, and it made everyone go, wow, this is like a classic love song that even though they liked it before, now that they were able to hear it in a different format, I think people were like, whoa, this is a hit. I think they even did it on American Idol.
Yeah, that was a brilliant cover. It just shows how good a song is when it can be done by a lot of different types of artists and still be done successfully in different styles. And it's just a perfect pop song. They do it so dour, it's like the lyrics are all upbeat, but it's kind of like there's still some doubt there,
This reminded me of a vision that I had years ago. Remember Starbucks would have put albums out, featured albums, like right by the cash register. Okay, so Adele 21 was sitting there, and that album was popular for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah,
that album was sitting there at Starbucks, and this Asian lady was right in front of me. I was talking to the barista, probably trying to be witty and fun, and she drops it on the counter, this Adele album, and we both stop our conversation and we look down on it, and we're like, you mean you don't have this yet? Everyone in the world has this, and you're 4 or 5 years later going to actually buy this album? We thought it was kind of whacked out. We laughed at it. So I'm going back to the Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me album from 1987. And here is the fourth single off the album, which is an amazing alternative rock pop song called Hot, Hot, Hot. It is, I love that song. Yeah, to this day, it's a groove. And the guitar and the beat, that to me really feels like What You Need by NXS. It's very similar. I'm not a musician, but I feel like that is their inroad to real pop music, and it worked.
I mean, it was just an absolutely white hot groove, and it shows they at their best, in their best lineups, terrific musicianship, careful attention to detail, great production. It's very crisp. It just jumps out of the speakers. It doesn't sound dated at all. It sounds like it could have been recorded yesterday.
I agree. I'm up to my fourth here. I'm counting. Killing an Arab is not a PC song, obviously. It has that Moroccan guitar, like surfer rock vibe to it. I'm alive, I'm dead, I'm a stranger killing an Arab. It's a wild ride for like a 3.5 minute song. I love it. I know that no one's ever going to be playing it on radio anymore because of the political connotations or just the fact that it just doesn't sound PC anymore. But it's a jam.
Staring at the sand, staring down the barrel at the Arab on the ground. The sea is on my mouth, but I hear no sound. I'm alive. I'm dead. I'm the stranger killing an Arab. I can turn and walk away, or I can fire the gun.
It's a great, yeah. Robert Smith wrote that when he was 15 years old. That was their first single. And, you know, it was controversial from the very early days when they performed it around, you know, their hometown of Crawley. So he had to explain even then why the song is not racist. And it's sort of troubled them throughout the years, especially when it came out on the Standing on a Beach compilation, which is when it got its first sort of wide exposure, you know, to American audiences for sure. But it's a great song. It's very stripped down. You know, it reminds me of a lot of early first singles. If you think about like the Beatles' Love Me Do, or yeah, you know, the Police, Roxy. It's like it's got that very raw, stripped down, very baby kind of sound to it. It sounds like a first single, you know.
I'm going to number 3, which is a Kyoto song. This is a song from The Head on the Door, 1985. Okay, Alan Smith from high school. Shout out to Alan Smith. Told me this song's about semen. I believed him up until this day, and he told me this lyric. It looks good. It tastes like nothing on earth. It's so smooth. It even feels like skin. It tells me how it feels to be new. And he pointed that lyrics out and said, that's about semen. And while I'm preparing for this interview, I read the whole lyrics and I said, wow, that has nothing to do with semen. But
Next to me, it looks good. It tastes like nothing on earth. It looks good. It tastes like nothing on earth. It's so smooth. It even feels like skin. It tells me how it feels to be new. It tells me how it feels to be new. 1,000 voices whispering truth. Tells me how
It's a nightmare. It's like it's a vivid nightmare, and you know there are sexual connotations in it for sure. So you know I never thought about that, but that lyric that you quoted definitely could be interpreted that way. Yeah, definitely.
yeah, well, obviously it hit my subconscious. I would try to think about who told me that, and then why that became one of my favorite songs. I don't know if there's very few semen songs that I love. Obviously, this is probably my favorite one. Okay, we're number
Probably.
2. Yeah, my number 2 is there was a soundtrack album from 1980 called Times Square. I never saw the movie, but it's one of those Robert Stigwood productions that were overbloated and sucked. RSO was into movies, and although they were successful with Saturday Night Fever and with Grease, they kind of went downhill after that. So Times Square was their punk album, and if you look at the soundtrack today, it's really awesome. And along with the Cure is on it from their first album. I got into that song from the soundtrack, and I was like, who is this band called The Cure? I need to know who this band is. It really helped me, and as of now, it's a total like power punk jam.
grinding halt. Everything's coming to a grinding halt. No sound, no people, no clocks, no people, no fire.
Yeah, that's a great early song. And you know, the band's The Cure's manager at the time, Chris Perry, he was also the head of Fiction Records. He signed the band. He wanted that to be the second single following Killing an Arab. They didn't want to go with Boys Don't Cry just yet because they were afraid that would pigeonhole them into a more pop vibe, and they thought that Grinding Halt was edgier and would be a great single. And so they put out a promo 12-inch to the DJs, around the to see sort of what the response would be, and it was a very lukewarm response. But so they ended up shelving the single, but they did put it on that soundtrack, and I'm glad they did because it sort of separates it from the rest of the early material and gives it sort of its own little niche.
My number one is Never Enough, which is probably in my top 25 songs of all time. It's from the Mixed Up album, which is a really interesting album. They were doing remix albums, and as of remix albums, this is probably one of the better ones that people have done. I can't think of any other artist that a remix album is so, really interesting to listen to. It's from 1990. I love everything about this, the sonic startup, the growling, what he's saying, whatever I do is never enough. It's heartfelt, especially in relationships. Yeah. I am a codependent by nature. That means I like to please people. So when it says it's never enough, it's never enough, it's a mantra that goes through my head. This is a mix that I feel fits right in Jane's Addiction's Mountain Song, or Head Like a Hole by 9 Inch Nails. Is that time period where this song is really perfect for a mix where you just add this right into it. Yeah, and it sounds great. It's great production. Mark Saunders, who actually wrote the foreword for the book, he produced that song, and it came about from a Carl Thompson riff he was just sort of jamming on. The band that was not even, the song they were going to record. The song that ended up as the B-side, Harold and Joe. Robert was working with Mark Saunders on that sort of electronic thing, while the rest of the band was just sort of, twiddling their thumbs in the other room. And so they just started jamming on this riff that Coral Thompson brought in. And Mark Saunders went over to the other side to see what they were doing and heard it and brought in Robert and said, "You got to hear this right now." And that's where Never Enough came from. It was born from that moment. And, they just fed off to the energy, the sort of restless energy, and it's one of their best rock songs for sure. It's a great choice. My top 10 is over. It's the Cure FAQ. It's a book that's coming out with Christian Gerard. It's on 10/15 this month. It's the Cure FAQ. All that's left to know about the most heartbreakingly excellent rock band the world has ever known. I finished my top 10. It's coming out on 10/15. And now it's Christian's turn to do his top 10. I'm going to let you riff on all these. I probably won't comment on them. So if you want to start it. You're 10. And
that's
you have
right.
your list?
I don't have my list, so if you can just name the tune, and then I'll just briefly expound on it.
You're number 10, a Juniper Crash.
Jupiter Crash from the Wild Moon Swings album. That's a very underrated album, and I love that song in particular. It's very lush, acoustic guitar sort of swirling ballad, one of my favorites. And that's one of the few songs from that record that The Cure still performs live to this day. So it's a Robert Smith favorite as well. Number 9, like Cockatoos.
Standing at the corner where the road turned dark apart, it's anywhere like blood rain fell back down on the street. It's just beach around your head an inch away from heaven, and face that's tightened all around the nights and out like cockatoos. Like Cockatoos, yeah. From Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me. It's another album track. Another sort of, a lot of acoustic guitar, very swirly and dream-like, sort of a nightmarish imagery. One of my favorite lyrics by Robert Smith, and a great vocal
delivery on that one also.
Number 8, Shake Dog Shake.
Wake up in the dark, aftertaste of anger in the back of my mouth. Spitting on the wall, cup some more and stain my skin with red.
Shake Dog Shake, that's the opening track from the Top album. That one, you know, they performed that on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony, even though it was never a single. The drummer on the song, Andy Anderson, had just recently passed away before the Hall of Fame, and so as an homage to him, Robert opened with that song. It's a great song. It's one of their more incendiary sort of hard rock tracks, and they've often used it as a opener for their shows. That was an opener for a long time, so it's a great song.
Number 7, A Forest.
That's the classic prototypical Cure song. Everything that they did after, was built on that song. That was their big breakthrough in terms of artistic and commercial momentum, and it just still sounds amazing.
Number 6, Pictures of You.
I've been looking so long at these pictures of you that I almost believe that they're real. I've been living so long with my pictures of you that I almost believe that the pictures are all.
It's just such a brilliant song, so emotional. Just the interplay between the guitar, the bass 6 that Robert is playing with Simon Gallups' bass part, whenever they perform it live, standing facing each other, just it's amazing, and it's just a really powerful song that just gets right to your heart.
Number 5, Want.
I'm always wanting more. Anything I haven't got, everything I want it all. I just can't stop. Planning all my days away, never finding ways to say I'll ever feel enough today. Tomorrow must be more. Drink more dreams, more bed, more drugs.
Want is another track from Wild Mood Swings. It's the opening track, and it gets back to sort of what you're talking about with Never Enough. It's the same sort of concept, and he's covered that multiple times in terms of he just can never be satisfied. There's always more that he wants. He wants more drugs, more liquor, more sex, more everything. It's just never enough. And Want sort of fits right into that sort of concept, and it's just a really powerful song. A lot of it's got a great climax. It just builds and builds and builds and kind of explodes. It's a great song.
Number 4, A Pink Dream.
Real so right, sucking on a straw. Rub my head and stagger out the door. Heading to the bright new beautiful.
That one is my hidden gem. It's a B-side, actually from the Wild Mood Swings era, and it's one of their best pop songs. It's that sort of driving acoustic pop sound that you would think of with Just Like Heaven or In Between Days, but it's never really been heard. It was a B-side to one of their lesser successful singles, and so it's one that I think would fit right nice on their greatest hits album if it had ever been given a chance. It's just a great song, a lot of real nostalgic, warm vibe to it.
Number 3, Fascination Street.
So put on your head, put on your crown. Cut the conversation, just
that was a huge one for me. First new Cure record since I really got into them with Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me in the singles collection. In America, Fascination Street was the first single from Disintegration, whereas the rest of the world, it was Lullaby. The American label wanted Fascination Street because they felt that it would go over better on modern rock, and they were right. It was a perfect choice. It's just a great song. The bass line is just killer. The way that the instrumentation builds and builds and builds, it's almost my number one.
Yeah, it's a great song. Just Like Heaven is number 2.
Perfect pop song. The arrangement, just the sort of subtle counter melodies on the keyboard, and then those soaring synths, just the guitar up and down, the descending and ascending guitar riffs. And Robert's vocal on this song is probably the best thing he's ever done as far as vocal performance. I mean, it's just, he nailed it. It's a perfect pop song, and it's a song that got me into the band, so it was hard for me not to put it at number 1.
It's the same deep water as you.
It's just a powerful epic. The centerpiece of Disintegration, which is their greatest album, those 2 songs back to back, The Same Deep Water as You and Disintegration. That's the core of that record. It's languid, it's slow moving, it builds with the sound of the thunder and the lightning and the rain, and it's just incredibly poignant and emotional and true. And, that's what The Cure is when you come down to it, true and genuine. And this song, more than any other, it was hard for me to write about. And in fact, the blurb in the book about this song is very short, because for me, it's, you just let the song do the talking. That's all you really need to do. And it's fantastic.
Christian Gerard, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. It's funny, like, we are Facebook friends, so we've never met, but
Yep.
Your music knowledge and your historic writing experience makes me want to pick your brain over and over. The fact that you have this passion for The Cure and you wrote this awesome book, I applaud you. I really want you to spell it out and tell people what's the name of the title, where they can get it.
It's available. It'll be available on October 15th. It's The Cure FAQ. All the stuff to know about the world's most heartbreakingly excellent rock band in history. I probably goofed that. But
You want to do a take
4 years.
Let's do a take 2.
Yeah, let me find. It's
You almost had it. It's the excellent rock band the world has ever known.
Yeah, The Cure FAQ. The most heartbreaking. All the stuff to know about the most heartbreakingly excellent rock band the world has ever known. Did I get it?
You did. It's awesome.
It's going to be available on October 15th. Amazon, any online retailer, really, Barnes & Noble, all of the major retailers. You can get it at Walmart, Target.com. It's going to be in bookstores, in the music section, and some record stores that sell books about music will have it. I'm hoping to do a few signings at a couple record stores, most likely. And it's exciting. I can't wait for people to actually get it and start, getting, feedback on it, and it's really exciting. I can't wait for it to come out.
You have a Facebook page or email where people can, I'm sure people want to have conversations with you about this.
Yeah, I do have a Facebook page. My writer's page, it's Christian Gerard. If you search for it, you should be able to pull it up. I am going to update it actually today. I still have an old article sort of on the front of it. I'm going to update it with some Cure imagery so people can find it. But yeah, you can reach me there or on Twitter. I should be easy to find there also.
Christian Gerard, thank you very much for talking to me today on Something Came from Baltimore. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I hope this is a gateway drug that we can talk in the future. I want to pick your brain about so many more artists and information that you have about music.
Yeah, I would love to. Anytime, just let me know. I'm totally down for it.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Something Came from Baltimore. I am your host, Tom Gouker, and it's wonderful to speak with Christian Gerard again. He is a friend of the pod. The book is called The Cure FAQ. All that is left to know about the most heartbreakingly excellent rock and roll band the world has ever known.